Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pete Wall, and I'd like to welcome you to Pillar to Post. This is usually a news channel or a review channel about SmackDown Raw and news and rumors of the wrestling world. Before I get started, I'd like you to hit like, also subscribe, and help this channel grow. Now, a lot of you are going to probably be wondering, what the hell does the title have to do with wrestling? And the title of this episode is Ryan Coke, Cigarettes, and Wrestling. What does it have to do with WWE or wrestling in general? Nothing and everything. And what do I mean by that? Well, this episode, I go on YouTube a lot. I watch a lot of people's videos. There's a lot of people, they do coffee chats. They do just sit downs and just talk. Well, I figured every Sunday I'm going to have a Ryan Coke session with the viewers. I'm going to smoke my cigarettes and I'm going to talk about anything and everything I want to talk about. Now, I've got my Ryan Coke, got my cigarette. What am I going to talk about? Well, there's not a whole lot of people that talk about how they became a wrestling fan, how they got into watching WWE, WCW, and JPW, whatever the wrestling production is. No one really talks about how they got into it. So for me, the story comes way back, or goes way back to my childhood, and my very early childhood. And I'm going to talk about some stuff that people usually don't like to talk about. I usually don't like talking about it, but I've come to grips with it. So, my story begins with at first, very lovable and adoring father, who was a drunk. But he loved a few things. He loved wrestling, he loved cars, and he loved carpentry. And as we got older, we started noticing the drunkard in him. And one day he decided to tell us he was done with the drinking and shit was changing. And we always wondered what that meant, because our life, although we were a poor family, it was a good life. We didn't get a lot of what the other kids and the children around the neighborhood got, but we were happy. Well, my father slowed down on drinking, and he became a very abusive, angry man. I don't really know the cause of this. I know he was abused as a child. I know he fought and struggled hard with himself to keep that away from us, but he lost that battle. What does this have to do with wrestling? How would this have got me into wrestling? Well, between all the abuse, all the bullshit I grew up with my father, there's a few things I could bond with him over. Wrestling and cars. And besides taking an ass whooping every now and then, or quite often as the case would be, we enjoyed our time together, sitting in front of that television, watching a good episode of wrestling. Now, anyone that's been a wrestling fan since childhood, they know what it feels like when you watched an episode back then, when you were a child, and how absorbed you got into it. Everything was real. Everything was wow. You know, it was over the top. It was unbelievable. It was these monster among men battling each other for supremacy in the ring. And that's how I viewed it. it was real to me back then. There was no such thing as storylines back then. It was like, holy shit, Hulk Hogan's whooping so and so's ass. Even as a child, I was not a Hulk Hogan fan. But to see guys like Sergeant Slaughter and all these other wrestlers back then, Iron Sheik, there's one that recently passed, Ron Bass, watching their matches with Hogan, they were awesome. And I remember sitting there with my father watching how he got absorbed into the match. You know, when there was a high impact move being done, he would literally inch closer and closer to the edge of his couch or his lazy boy, whatever the case may be. And with every punch, you could see he was, you know, putting his body into those blows. He wanted to punch as well. And it amazed me as a child. Even though it was a hard life for me, it fascinated me watching this man be completely absorbed into those matches. Now, I grew up with 3 brothers and 2 sisters. My siblings and me, it came to 6 siblings. And if you have a brother or a sister and you were a wrestling fan back then, you'd watch an episode of Raw, or, well, back then it wasn't Raw, it was like Superstars or whatever the shows they ran back then. Saturday Night Main Event was rare, but you know, everything was televised back then. You didn't have to have cable to watch wrestling. And so, as a child, wrestling was always in the family. And what did we do once we'd watch an episode of wrestling? Well, we had to practice the moves we seen on television. And when you have 2 younger brothers and an older brother, well, it's going to be an all-out war. And that's what it was in our family. It was a way for us to release our aggression from the abuse we experienced from our father. Now, sad to say, my older brother was very much like my father. He was very abusive. He was very controlling. Even at a young age, he was a bully. And he fancied himself as a ladies' man. And he probably was. I don't know. But he took wrestling to the abusive state, where me and my brothers, my younger brothers, we enjoyed it. We fantasized about it. We wanted to be wrestlers. And we would, you remember everyone, you know, winter came, everyone would make the snow castles, they'd make snowmen. Well, me and my brothers, we would make a wrestling ring out of snow. We would roll 6-foot high snowballs, these massive boulders, and those would be our corner posts. And we would wrap a thick rope, a towing rope, around our ring, and then we'd go and make another huge boulder, and all of us would have to work together to put it up on these monster boulders we made, so that way it was high enough. And that was our wrestling ring come the winter time. So we practice our moves, our pile drivers, our body slams, this and that. And my father would be the first one out there. You guys are going to kill yourself. Or if someone, you know, ended up getting hurt, someone was getting an ass whooping. But it never deterred us. This was our fascination. And as we got older, our matches became more complex. Our matches became more vicious. We would go so far as to take mattresses and make ourselves a huge ring. No ropes, but, you know, we'd fake it. We'd fake being bounced off the ropes. We'd get hip tossed. We'd get back body dropped. You know, we'd get atomic dropped. Suplex, power bombs, you name it, we did it. And it was the way it was back then. And I remember growing up with guys like the Heart Foundation, the Road Warriors, or Legion of Doom, as a lot of you know, Demolition. You know, I grew up with those teams. Those were my fascination. They were the freaks of the wrestling world, except for the Hearts. And then a guy came in called the Ultimate Warrior. He was all over the place, face painted up, you know, running down to the ring. It was never seen before. No one came running down to the ring the way he did, shaking the ropes. It was unheard of. And he became my favorite wrestler. So I began to exercise a little bit more. I wanted to be able to gorilla press my brothers over my head and drop them and then do the running splash as the Ultimate Warrior would do. And through it all, me and my brothers, we would beat the shit out of each other. And we loved it. Except for my older brother. I'm not going to talk about my older brother with this part because, like I said, he was too much like my father. Very abusive. But my two younger siblings, it was always, oh my God, I seen this on wrestling today. I have to try it. Can you let me try this move? And it was always like a submission move, or, you know, a new way to do a power bomb, or, you know, the Pearl River plunge, because Ahmed Johnson came in. He made the Pearl River plunge, which was a tiger suplex power bomb. So it was always trying something new on the siblings, or the siblings trying something new on me. And that was life. And as I got older, all of a sudden 1990, 91 comes around, and the Dead Man, Kane the Undertaker, makes his debut appearance. And my whole perspective on wrestling changed. He was a new freak, but he was the ultimate freak. He was the Dead Man. He was this mortician that could absorb everyone's punishment and just keep on coming at you. He was kind of like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and the Chainsaw Massacre and all those horror flicks just all meshed into one unbeatable, unbreakable human being. Supernatural human being, I should say. And I began, like, I used to do the Macho Man impressions and the Ultimate Warrior impressions. Even the Hulk Hogan, even though I hated his guts, even from childhood, I hated his guts. I did Hulk Hogan impersonations. And then the Undertaker came in, and everyone remembered his very first words. And it was only 3 words that he was allowed to speak at the beginning. And they were iconic. They riveted people, and it drew them in, and we couldn't get enough of this guy. Those 3 words, rest in peace. No one will ever forget those lines. And he became my all-time favorite wrestler. And I've had favorites throughout my year. Undertaker's always been the top one. Jake the Snake Roberts, very close tying with him. Because Jake Roberts was the type of wrestler that could tell a story inside the ring as well as outside. He was soft-spoken. He never raised his voice. And he grabbed your attention. He was methodical in the ring, very much like the Undertaker. Undertaker was slow, methodical. He tore a person apart bit by bit throughout the match. And he could absorb every amount of pain that they put upon him. So, what happened? Well, I had to start trying his moves. And I was already, 1991. I was probably roughly around 12-ish. And the Tombstone Pile Driver. My God. You know, and it had been used in the past before. I remember Harley Race using it. I remember people from WCW using this move. But when Undertaker used the Tombstone Pile Driver, it was like nothing ever seen before. It looked dominating. It looked like he could kill a man. And yes, you could break a man's neck using this move. Case in point, one night I grabbed my youngest brother, threw him up on my shoulder, wanted a tombstone, but I didn't want to hurt him. So I figured, do it on the mattress, make sure he doesn't get hurt, keep his head off from hitting the mattress too hard. And I did not take into factor that my bed frame was actually a waterbed frame with a mattress on the inside. I pile drive this poor motherfucker's head straight onto the waterbed frame. And I can remember the thud and the crack that it made, and it turned my stomach. And the only thing I could think of doing was covering this poor boy's mouth to keep him from screaming out loud, so that way my father didn't come rushing into the bedroom to find out what the hell happened next. And I was whispering to him, it's all right, it didn't really hurt, it just sounded that bad. And the thought of maybe hurting his neck had not even come into the picture at that moment. It was, did I crack his head open? Is he bleeding? And I kept his mouth covered till the whimpering died down, and I knew that the screaming wasn't going to start up again. And I'm checking this poor little bastard's head. No blood. Oh, there's a little goose egg. He was moving his legs. He was moving his arms. I did not kill or paralyze the poor motherfucker. And it's something I haven't lived down since that happened. He still brings it up. I'm almost 40. He is mid-30s. And he still does not forget about this. But that was our life growing up. Because there were so many issues with our family. The beatings, the abuse, the verbal abuse that we suffered through. We needed an outlet. And that outlet was wrestling. So, what does this have to do with alcohol and cigarettes? Alcohol and cigarettes played a big factor in our upbringing. I started drinking at a very young age. I started smoking at a very young age. I was 7 years old when I had my first cigarette. I started smoking full time by the time I was 12. I've been drinking alcohol since I was very young. My father liked to brag about getting me drunk when I was 2 years old. And I can remember stealing booze from my father since I was roughly 6, 7 years old. Me and my brothers would all steal alcohol. They'd always bring us over to their drinking buddy's place. We were friends with their kids' and the other drunkards' friends. So we were all stealing booze from them all night long. We'd steal a 60-pounder. We'd steal bits out of each 24, and then we'd wait for them to go make another booze run because they ran out too quick for some reason, and we'd go and take more. What happened? Well, we'd all get drunk. We'd hide in the cornfields around the farm, and we'd flatten down the corn, and there was our wrestling ring. And we'd have these huge brawls, battle royals, royal rumbles. There was like 20 of us kids. It was fantastic. What am I getting to in all this? It isn't just a chat about how I grew up and everything, or about abuse or everything like that. I look at my kids now. My son was a huge wrestling fan when he was very little. Every time I put on wrestling, he was sitting right with me. It didn't matter how young he was sitting right there. He wanted to watch wrestling with me. He got older and he realized it's all bullshit. It sucks to watch. There's nothing exciting about it. I've got 2 daughters. My oldest daughter, she is 14 right now. She's the only one that actually wants to sit and watch wrestling with her father. So, and she has the same views on wrestling as I do. I watch wrestling every Monday, every Tuesday. I don't watch NXT. I do watch some highlights on YouTube. But she's the only one of my children at this moment that enjoys watching wrestling. And even her has the same outlook on wrestling these days as I do. It is, for the most part, pretty fucking sad looking. She doesn't get the excitement as she used to out of wrestling, as I do. Like, I don't get that excitement. Seeing what happened on SmackDown at the end of Raw this week, fucking phenomenal. It was like a blowback from the past, you know, from the Attitude Era. Mick Foley and Triple H and Stephanie and Seth Rollins segment at the end of Raw. It was a throwback. And I actually found myself intrigued and wanting to watch more. And then the show ended. And I'm thinking, why can't it be like this every week? Why can't every match have that kind of influence and impact every week that it once had? You had your jobber matches. Like, how many times did we see Brooklyn Brawler get his ass handed to him? Barry Horowitz. You know, it was, you know, you always had those jobbers in the ring. But the people that they faced were always top stars or mid-carders, and they made the match look good. Now, if you were to take a guy like Brooklyn Brawler these days, put him in a match against Dean Ambrose, AJ Styles, whatever, would you get that same feeling? I guarantee you won't. It won't be impressive. It won't be edge of your seat worthy. It won't be exciting in the least. And I find it sad to see. I get told all the time, you have to look at the product as it is now and not what it once was. To be a little bit more fair when I do my reviews and results and share my opinion on what I think of the product these days. I shouldn't be looking at the past to give a biased opinion on the product of these days, as you know, where we are now, the current product. And I'm wondering why. Why should I have to skew my opinion because I grew up when wrestling was wrestling? When wrestling was about entertaining the fans and grabbing their attention, not just about making money. Yes, that was a part of it. Vince McMahon always had this plan of becoming the biggest federation in the world, and he has that. But he lost something in the end. He lost competitors. It didn't make for good TV anymore. His wrestlers don't have to try as hard as they once did because they don't have to worry about another business taking over. WCW was that element that made WWE work harder to improve their product. Now, WCW has been absorbed by WWE. Same with ECW. What do we have now? We have a lack of creativity. We have a lack in performance. We have a lack in storylines and the capability of a wrestler to tell that story while they are in that ring. We have Hollywood writers instead of bookers. The list goes on and on. Like, we have lost so much since WCW and ECW were absorbed by WWE. There is no reason for a wrestler or even for the creative team to push themselves, because what do they have to worry about? TNA isn't going to all of a sudden skyrocket in the ratings and, engulf WWE ratings. Ring of Honor isn't going to do that. New Japan is not going to do that. Any wrestling company out there doesn't have the money, doesn't have the power, does not have the talent to do this. So you have a creative team that comes from Hollywood that doesn't know the business. They don't have the wrestling creativity to make a good match or a good feud. Back in the day, you could have a feud and a rivalry run from one WrestleMania all the way to the next WrestleMania, and it was always entertaining. It would veer off and branch off in between to make sure that it didn't go stale, and then it would realign and that feud would be hot again. These days, it is believed that we, the fans, do not have the attention span to make a decent storyline. So, what do? They have 1 or 2 fucking pay-per-views a month. No chance to build up a good storyline for each pay-per-view. And we are left wanting. We hate the product. Oh, sure, we see glimmers of hopes here and there with SmackDown, sometimes with Raw. But in the end, we are left wanting. Because what do we see on SmackDown? We see maybe 3 matches. They're very short. And they mean nothing. It was just something thrown together. They go from week, or not even week to week. A match can be changed from within an hour of it going live on air. Case in point, Nia Jax versus Sasha Banks at the last pay-per-view. Nia Jax was to go over. An hour before that match, it was changed to Sasha Banks going over. That wasn't really the case back in the day. It was all planned way ahead. The wrestlers were told, okay, this is what's going to happen. Work it out. Get there. Sell it. And if you couldn't sell it, you were let know. So you had to try harder to make sure that you won the fans over. Jim Cornette talks about this in many of his podcasts, where he was told by the booker, go out there. He had like 10 minutes left of the show. Go out there and sell. He wasn't told really what to do. He wasn't really told where he was supposed to go in the end. He was supposed to sell the pay-per-view basically coming up or whatever it was. So he went out there, ran his mouth. He did what he thought he wanted to do or could do. Came back and was told, you failed, and you failed miserably. You did not sell anything. You went out there, you danced around, you ran your mouth, and in the end, you did nothing. So he had to come back and try again. He had to keep on trying. He had to make sure he knew how to sell the fans. Do you have anyone these days that can sell to the fans as the old wrestlers could? There isn't many. The women can't do it. Many of the men can't do it. You've got Undertaker that can sell anything because, fuck, he was from that era. But in the end, not many current wrestlers can actually sell to the fans. You have a guy that has all this talent in Brock Lesnar. He's an amateur wrestler. What does he do in his matches? 90% is suplexes. The rest is punches, knees, kicks, and that's it. That makes for a very boring match. Yes, he is. They build him as, the man from Suplex City. He's going to introduce you to Suplex City. Blah, blah, blah. That does not mean he has to completely use suplexes throughout his entire match. It makes for a very boring match. It makes for a very unentertaining match. Now, we are supposed to be excited about him versus Bill Goldberg come WrestleMania 33. Why? We have seen a whole, a little over maybe 2 minutes with Goldberg in the ring in action. He beat Kevin Owens in approximately 22 seconds. He beat Brock Lesnar in, I believe it was 190 seconds or even less than that. I can't remember. Very short matches. So about 2 minutes in total we've seen him in ring action. And we are supposed to believe that these guys can headline WrestleMania 33. It makes for a very boring, unentertaining match. I don't want to see it, but I will see it because I want to have content for my channel. I want to give any viewers that are out there some kind of content. Can I promise good content with a match like that? No. You can't promise anything with a match like that. We all know Brock Lesnar is slated to win that match. He will be the Universal Champion for Raw. And there are talks about him and Reigns facing each other in WrestleMania 34. If I believed in a higher power, I'd probably pray that that match does not happen. But I don't, and we're probably still going to get stuck with it regardless, because Vince McMahon has developed this hard-on for this Samoan named Roman Reigns. And this hard-on is killing any momentum that this guy could have had of his own. The fans loved him when he was a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. What happened? He didn't change after the S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh no, he's going to use his protective vest like he did when he was in S.H.I.E.L.D. and he's going to continue with that same gimmick. We're not going to make him learn to speak better. We're not going to make him learn to wrestle better. We're just going to give him to you as is, and you're going to love it or go fuck yourself. That is the mentality of Vince McMahon. This guy is now being booed out of most arenas he walks into. And a simple thing could happen. You make him go major heel. You make him be something far different than what we're seeing. You make him so bad to the point where people actually have a reason to dislike him. Not this bad heat that he's got going right now. I'm talking about good heat, where he is a believable bad guy, where everybody actually hates him. Now, I read an article of X-Pac saying that this isn't the 1980s anymore. There doesn't need to be a major heel turn for this guy. People just need to learn to get on board, basically. I say X-Pac needs to go fuck himself, because he's acting like a puppet. He doesn't want to say anything bad about the product because he wants to stay on the safe side. Honestly, I was never a fan of 1-2-3 Kid, X-Pac, whatever you want. He kind of like rode the coattails of the Giants, as in Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, you name it, you know. He didn't get famous on his own. He got famous for being a part of or an affiliate of these guys. When he was in WWE or WWF at the time, he was 1-2-3 Kid. And then he walked out of the company and he became Six. And then he came back to WWE and he was known as X-Pac. You know, and it was always him affiliating himself with Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and Road Dogg Jesse James, and Billy Gunn, or in WCW it was NWO with Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, the like. And you want to say it is not the 1980s anymore. He talked all about the way heels were portrayed back then, that it wasn't safe for them. People bought into it to the point where they would riot and they had to hide in the locker rooms because they were hated to that point. That's what a heel's job is. The fans should believe that you are that bad of a person. You have all the security these days and you want to say you were afraid? I'm sorry, we know wrestling is fake. We're not like the throwback era. We're not fans that believe that everything in wrestling is real. When we want to riot, that's because you force a guy like Roman Reigns down our throat in a role that we don't approve of. So, I don't know if I really covered anything. I don't know if I really did anything on this show. This is I take about 5 shots of rye in a cup and I add a can of fucking cola to it. This is my 3rd cup today in the last hour or 2. This is like my 3rd cigarette on air. My point is this. Do not tell me to not reflect on the past of wrestling to give my opinion on the current product. It doesn't work. I grew up in that era. I grew up when wrestling was wrestling. When wrestling felt real to the point where you got involved into it even though you're sitting at home. You don't have that kind of product these days. You always start off the show, do not try this at home. Well, I'm sorry, but no kids back in the day actually killed themselves trying this at home. Not in the places I lived. We didn't go out and grab a steel pipe because we seen it on wrestling and go and beat ourselves over the head or a family member or a friend. We were safe and unsafe at the same time, but we enjoyed the product. We are not enjoying that these days. So I'm going to leave it at that. That is my Ryan Coke and cigarette chat for this Sunday. I hope you enjoyed. I probably rambled a bit. I don't really care. I'm just trying to do something different. I'm trying to give you something to watch. I'm trying to make this channel more about wrestling and about me as a person. I've talked about my past a little bit today, and I plan on talking more about my past. I have had quite the past. I want to talk about my introduction into the wrestling world, where I wanted to actually train to become a professional wrestler. I had amateur experience in high school. I wanted to take that a step further. So next Sunday, how about I talk about that and whatever else I feel like. Today was just about a chat. Chat about wrestling, chat about me, chat about my upbringing, chat about my introduction into the wrestling world. So I'm going to say goodnight. It is 7:35. It is Saturday. And I kept on saying Sunday. So that tells you how fucking tired I am. I actually got a little bit of sleep this afternoon. Didn't last very long. But insomnia is still my best friend. So you have a good night. And I will talk to you maybe tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow it will be because I have more news to share. And it will be another episode, a regular episode of Pillar to Post featuring rumors and news of WWE and the wrestling world. So I will see you tomorrow morning, probably around 5, 6 in the morning. So have a good night, folks. Enjoy your weekend.